Good evening and welcome to Mental Health Matters with me, Dr Audrey Tang. Today's show, we are talking about eco-influencing, and we have got Jill Perkins, also known as JamJar Gill, joining us to talk about what an eco-influencer is. We're also going to be revisiting some interviews with guests who talk a lot about sustainability and how they feed that through their work. So for now, let's head over to the main studio and find out what exactly is an eco-influencer.
I started 15 years ago plus with blogging, and off the back of a film which I saw, which really inspired me. At that point in time, I was working in a variety of sort of admin jobs which weren't very creative or inspiring, and I kind of had a discussion with my older sister at that time around how do I get out of this mentality? And she said, sometimes work is just work, and you can seek that creative outlet outside of work. And that sort of coincided with me watching a film, which I always make reference to in this story, called Julia and Julie, which I don't know if you guys have heard of, but basically it's the true story, and it's been made into a movie of Julia Childs, who is the woman who brought French cooking to America in the 1950s, played by Meryl Streep, and then a lady who is working as a civil servant in the Twin Towers in 2001. And, very resonant story for me at that point, because she was in this job which she found super depressing, super admin based, but she loved to cook. And she'd grown up with Julia Child's Art of French Cooking book through her mum, and decided to start a blog about it. And it was the first, it was in that era of blogging where it was far more journalistic anyway. And she decided to give herself a year to work her way through this whole cookbook, cooking every recipe. And I guess the point sort of really resonated with me, because I was like, I can do this online, and I can have this creative outlet online to talk about the things which matter to me or I find inspiring. So I started a recipe journal blog off the back of that. And then when we bought a house, I started another blog around doing up our house on a budget, called Practical Beautiful. And then a few years into that journey, I was talking to a friend of mine in PR, and she said, if you actually want to make this a proper side hustle, which was kind of a new concept at that point in time, then she was like, you're going to have to blog a lot more regularly, and you're going to have to amalgamate the two. So that sort of coincided with me getting the nickname at work, actually, JamJar Gill, because I worked for a bit of a stingy company at the time who didn't provide teas and coffee. So I used to take it in old jam jars. And then so I created this sort of lifestyle blog and started creating content for it. And then there was sort of discussions, because I'm always in community as I'm trying to build my business, around how important it was to find a niche. And I kind of started with the content and then looked back over it, and I was like, well, what is the thread that runs through all this? And I naturally, because of my upbringing, talked a lot about conscious consumerism and about eco and about natural health, and then heard this term eco-influencer, which really resonated with me. And I always describe it to people as kind of the juxtaposition of the Kardashian influencer, in that it's all so much more about small and conscious and quality over quantity and all that sort of piece. So that's kind of how I came to it all, really.
Lovely. That's really nice.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, over the years, we've come to learn about how important recycling is, and carrying refillable water bottles. But what are some of the other fundamental eco-conscious things that we might be missing and we should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I think the most popularized slogan in the eco movement is the 3 R's, which are reduce, reuse, and recycle. And I quite often say to people that what they need to do is put thens in between the words, because I think people jump straight to the recycle, and I was guilty of doing that too.
Yeah, that's a really good
That's
point.
the point, is like, if you actually slow it all down, and this is why I always speak to what I refer to as conscious consumerism, and conscious, whatever, like waste management, I guess. It's all conscious. It's slowing it down. It's mindfulness. It's actually pausing and going, wait a minute, but what happens here? Wait a minute, but how is that made? Why is it so cheap? It's asking these questions and actually digging a little bit deeper into it, rather than just going, I want, I need, buy. It should be reduce first, then reuse, and then recycle.
I think you highlight a very good point on the conscious aspect, because there's a lot of greenwashing going on. So businesses are all going, oh, I do this, I do that, I'm therefore eco-friendly. And you've got some really interesting case studies on your blog. For example, you've got the rise and fall of the body shop. So what do businesses who promote this eco-consciousness need to be aware of?
Well, I think the thing is, it is part of something going into the mainstream, is that you get greenwashing, or you get the equivalent for whatever positive thing you're pushing into society. And actually, to me, I see that in a funny sort of a way as so it's obviously becoming popular. I think part of my approach is this soft approach, and asking people to just question. And that's why I like conscious consumerism rather than terms like eco-warrior. Or, it's a different vibe, isn't it? There was a stat which I heard the other week, which absolutely blew my mind. I was talking to someone who worked in a charity shop, and they said if they were to stop clothes manufacture now, we'd have enough clothes in existence on the planet to clothe 7 generations.
Oh, wow.
They need to take responsibility to do their own research to a certain degree, but I see my goal as going, right, what low-hanging fruit is there in your busy life which you can look at? Because I'm a massive believer that if everyone does little bits here and there, then it all adds to that greater whole.
I've had a look at your website, and it shows your lovely home and where you've renovated and upcycled. Could you make some suggestions for eco-friendly products that we could use in the home?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's oftentimes about, I love going to car boots, going to charity shops, buying secondhand in general, buying on Facebook, selling. There's so much product already in existence that actually a lot of the times it's questioning whether you need to buy new. And there's certain categories where it is worth buying new. I mean, for example, electronics and technology, it often is worth buying new, because then you've got the guarantees and it's working. And actually then you're making the eco choice from the perspective as well. Say, like, we updated our oven and our washing machine and tumble dryer all went this year. But by buying new, we were able to buy the most eco-friendly A+++++, and like induction hobs and stuff like that, which are, environmentally friendly in that regard. One of the companies who I always end up going back to is IKEA, because IKEA is known for having sustainability policies and caring about planting trees and caring about using natural fabrics. So to me, there's a book which I always make reference to, which was, really relevant to me in this space. And it was called 7. It's by Jen Hatmaker. And she basically did 7 months of less. So for each month, she picked a category. So, like, for example, food, consumerism, clothes. And within the 7 for that month, she then, for example, with food, she only had 7 ingredients she could cook from for the whole month. Within consumerism, she looked at her bank account and she limited it to how many stores or shops, online and not, that she could buy from for that month, and limited it down to 7. And within that 7, it had to be the most environmentally friendly possible.
Do you have any eco-conscious products, like cleaning products and things that we could start using? Because again, that's actually great for animals as well. So if you've got pets, it's really nice to have those natural products as opposed to, because my cat likes licking the shower. If I've got bleach down there, that's not great.
No.
So
and there are a lot of products on the market actually now, more and more. And actually, it was interesting because I think last year it was. And actually Greenpeace run this every year. They do something called the Big Plastic Count, and it literally, for I think it is a month, you have to record every single piece of plastic which you put in the waste. But it really highlighted to me that actually within the beauty side, so toiletries and such, and also within the cleaning side, I'm already doing it. And I think it's always looking at, the product development, because this is happening all the time. So, for example, there was a time when I was using laundry sheets because I thought, oh, they're great, they're small, you can get them posted through the post. And then I found out, oh, actually, it's like dishwasher tablets, which you get, which are eco-friendly, which have the plastic dissolvable wrapper around them. It's the same thing. It's basically like PVA. It's like PVA glue from childhood. The point is, it doesn't actually break down in the water just because it's not visible to our eyes. So that's something I've learned in the last sort of year. And then I'm now looking for products without that in. But also there's a lot to be said for like the natural old school ways of doing things, like bicarbonated soda and vinegar.
True.
It's actually cheap as chips and very, very effective.
A lot of us have these things anyway, plus they work. And I have used things like vinegar on smells and other things, like I think getting out stains as well. Certain things you can really use, and it's brilliant. We're going to keep you. We're actually going to go over to our conversation about blue zones with Felicia, because she really talks about if you want to make those changes, pick one and make it stick. This is the topic of blue zones. Now, from my own research, I had to look this up. It's encouraging people to do things like move a bit more naturally, using the environment a bit more, having a sense of purpose, which I think it fits within positive psychology. Downshifting, so trying not to be in the rat race anymore. I'm not quite sure how that can work, but the 80% rule interested me, and I think as a nutritionist this will be something that you will also be able to expand on, is eating until 80% full, not overeating, and focusing on a plant-based diet primarily. Also fostering a sense of belonging and actually surrounding ourselves with the right tribe, and I love that. How does each of that really work in practice?
And I think that's it. You know, theoretically, it's great, and I love it. I actually recommend people look at the website to do with blue zones. I really do. But I think we need to remember it's a concept, and it's based on normal people living their regular lives. And we can learn from that, and we can adapt. But it's not people who've been put in these, studios or in these gardens to garden for a while, and then what can we learn? They're living their regular lives. So when you look at these societies, you have people who for years and years have their own garden and they grow their own produce, and then from what they grow they have it to share with their family and friends, so that's community. Or maybe they give some additional to people who live in the community. So that's all community. They're obviously using their body because it is hard work. I think people...
It's very hard work.
People don't say gardening is hard work, or planting.
It's exercise.
Exactly. So they're exercising, they're getting that, they're being out in the fresh air. So all of those things are things that we romanticise, I guess, nowadays, saying we should go towards doing that. But I think it's a recognition that they are things that we can try to move towards to attain, but in a natural way, kind of doing it as an everyday, the same way they do, everyday purpose. You're growing and you're eating that food. And once you actually know what you're growing, you have more of a connection anyway.
Of course, yeah.
So I think if people want to actually start thinking about this, you don't have to grow, because not everybody's got a garden to do that. But just taking maybe one of the principles, like it might be community. And it might be that you want to hang out in a community cafe, or you just want to meet up with friends at a certain time. Start with that. And then, build from that, rather than thinking, these blue zones, they've got all of the answers, we've got to do all of it. Because it can just be overwhelming.
See, I really like that. I know you're going to be pulling unpacking this a bit more, but we've had architects on the show, master planners, who create communities like this. And I get that, because then you can almost inbuild the fact that you've got parks and you can walk everywhere and you can grow things and everything. But I know, coming at it from, I guess, a layperson's point of view, I will sit there and go, do I have to move to a blue zone? How do I find these blues? Are they denoted? And it's confusing. Sorry, excuse me, choking myself. It's confusing more than overwhelming for me, I think. So
the other thing I would say with that is, when you actually look at some of the areas, or quite a few of the areas that they will talk about, Okinawa in Japan, a lot of those areas are actually changing because of the younger population's demographic. Not everybody in that area adheres to the same kind of philosophy. So some people there will be eating fast foods. Some people there aren't as healthy. So we need to kind of take that in perspective and not, as I said, romanticise it as well. And feel bad about ourselves, because we're not living in this perfect blue zone.
Yeah. I love that. And that's what I love about you, Felicia. It's always common sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is so important to remind, I think, everybody and ourselves sometimes that we see these things on paper and then suddenly go, oh, this looks like a great idea. But then how do we implement it? Well, actually, what you're saying is we can just pick one thing.
Yeah,
focus on that one thing.
Start small and kind of build up to the ideal, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Love it.
Oh, it does sound really great. And so why is the environment that we function within such a key factor to our well-being?
I love that, because there's a lot of talk on you are the sum of the 5 people you're around. But really, when you think of, and talking about the urban planners that you were saying, I do actually love what they do. When I was at the Wellcome Trust, they had this urbanisation. And so there's a lot of research about nature and how it can actually physically help us. And so they were actually showing that, this can be incorporated, having plants in your house. Yeah. So it's all of those benefits that we have. But our environment really helps to keep us safe. Yeah. It helps us to feel nurtured, to grow and develop. And, particularly if you have got quite a chaotic lifestyle, then you come into a house that's quite messy and that's still in your head. You have nowhere to be calm, nowhere to centre yourself. And so I think, that environment is really important. And we don't all have the luxury of that. You might be living in a tiny flat and your neighbours are really noisy and you can't move. Yeah. But maybe there is some way that you can put something beautiful that you can look at, and that can stimulate you, that can help your nervous system to just be calm when your neighbours are going off. Again, because I think when we talk about a lot of things, and I work with everyday people, we don't all live in these huge houses with these wonderful gardens where you have your growing patch, where you have your relaxation. We don't. Yeah. The reality is that a lot of us are really busy. We come home and the house isn't necessarily as we want it to be, but we can create a little space or something that we can identify with, really, that makes it our safe zone, makes it our quiet place.
So then what would you say to an organisation where maybe somebody has kind of embraced all of these principles and realised that organisation isn't for them, and then they up and leave?
It's a challenging one. If you're asking me as a consultant going in, then it's my job to advise about how, to have a healthy environment.
True.
And that is to help your employees feel healthy, feel well. But I don't think that the employer thinks they're going to leave But I say great. You know, really, that is the purpose. And I think if we look back to maybe, again, this is romanticising, but, you know, different communities or societies who have a family kind of environment for their employees will leave, as children do. You grow, you advance, you move on. And it should be a process that you're happy that they move on. I've heard of actually employers knowing somebody and saying, my staff member is really great. I think they've outgrown. I think they'd be really good for you. I love that because that's actually not only advancing the employee, that's actually saying this is the kind of organisation that lots of people would want to work for. But it's rare, to be fair. It is actually rare to do that. But I think it's a really important kind of facet for employers to think about their employees. What's the value of them as human beings, not as numbers? And you know, on a spreadsheet. And so, you know, when I have been working with employers and talking about the staff, it's almost training the employer to think in a different way. It's not about how are you going to make them more productive and be healthy, but it's almost like thinking about yourself as well in that process. How are you going to be able to accept the things that are uncomfortable? And it comes up. It's quite surprising how often that comes up.
I love your point about family. And that they grow and they blossom and they go. And that is really important for organisations, actually. Because I think unless... And even then there's a question over how healthy it is to keep that person with you. But even if the organisation is evolving and growing and these people are staying with them because they're evolving and growing, it's almost, again, sorry to bring it back to teaching, but a lot of times you cannot get a headship, you cannot progress to headship unless you've worked in 2 or 3 different schools in senior leadership, because you can't just go in the same school and they go, oh, I'm a head now, because that's not healthy. So,
and I think that, you know, employees stay either because they feel they have no other option and they're miserable, or you see organisations where people stay and they contribute so much more than they need to because they just love it. You know, I've worked in one of those organisations. I was going to say not a lot, but I would want to go to work early. I'm not one that stays really late, but I'd go to work early, really just put everything into it because I felt that what I was putting in was actually valued, and you could see the difference. It felt almost like, you know, that chain reaction that atoms have when it knocks onto each other. That's very, very special. And I've tried to create it in other places, but I think other places are quite structured. We do this is the way we do it, and you stay for a length of time so that we get this result. And people stay, but they're begrudging, and you hear that.
And that affects productivity. Welcome back to Mental Health Matters After Hours. We're here talking with JamJar Gill, and the reason I call you that is because that is the name of your podcast. Now, we've been talking today about eco-consciousness and generally consciousness when you're making any form of healthy change, whether that's about our environment or whether that's our own personal changes as well. Now, Jill, you host a podcast, so what are those key messages that you want our listeners, our viewers, to take away from our chat and from the messages in your podcast?
Just being conscious in general, conscious with yourself, conscious with the decisions you make, the products you use, but also learning to listen to your body and listen and reconnect with nature, and just thinking about the impact which you personally are making.
You've got some nice recipes on your website. I was having a look at some of them. But one of the myths about being eco-friendly or eco-aware is that we should all be vegan. But you do cook with meat. So what's your approach to anyone who says plant-based is the best way forward?
You know, to me, again, sorry to sound like a broken record here, but it comes down to being conscious. And I have a lot of vegan friends, and some of them I'll have some heated discussions with at times. But To me, I would say that when I cook with meat, I'm conscious of buying meat which has been free, like is free range, is organic where it can be. I'd rather eat less meat and quality meat rather than no meat at all, because I enjoy the taste of meat, and I also see the nutritional value of meat and the protein which it brings, and I enjoy it. For example, if I choose to buy a chicken, I will buy a free range chicken, and then I will cook a roast with it, and I'll usually cook 2 meals with it, and I'll boil the bones for broth. And this is kind of what I refer to, or have referred to, as the grandma mentality. It's taking that wisdom of the older way of doing things. Or, I mean, this is something which is such a shame to me, is that as cultures become more affluent, it's the misconception that it's the upward, you know, trajectory of buy new, buy better, buy bigger, buy fancier, and that's just capitalism. Whereas actually, it's always the case that you should still take those same principles. You should still live in your values. You should still be conscious, regardless of my budget. You know, hopefully I will be more wealthy one day, but to me, I see that as opportunity to buy more organic, to support more of the causes which matter to me. So what I'd encourage people to do, regardless of whether they work for themselves or whether they work for an employer, is really to tap into the values piece and go, well, what are my core values? What do I care about individually? And why? And it's asking those questions. It's the curiosity, isn't it?
It is, and the awareness. Thank you very much. Where can we learn more about you and your eco-influence work?
So I'm basically JamJar Gill on every platform. So it's JamJar Gill with a G. So jamjargill.com has all my links to all my socials, and you can join my newsletter there. You can also, something which I'm looking to do is move my Holistic Health podcast over to Substack, which is a platform which is basically where all the journalists went when Twitter got X'd. It's about, I want to carry on being the juxtaposition to the number chasing and everything like that, and I'd rather build an authentic community around what I'm talking about, and I'd love whoever's listening to be a part of that. And I do also help small businesses as well with communicating authentically online, and I'm more than happy to speak to them about conscious consumerism within their business and their personal lives as well. That is part of what I'm doing. And as I build this brand and get my head, you know, I'm 15 years into this journey now, and still it's such a learning curve being an entrepreneur. It really, really is. But I think this values piece has really come to me this year, since I've been doing a few business courses as well, and weaving it through all three parts of my brand, being the eco-influencer educator, the holistic health podcaster, and the creative business services. And I'm now planting a tree and carbon offsetting for every creative services piece of work which I do, which I know is one small part of it, like carbon offsetting is one small part of it. But I think, you know, even if, again, people to consider that sort of thing, or consider what cleaning products they're using in their homes or in their places of work, you know, thinking about the food that they eat at lunchtime, trying to eat more seasonably. There's so many different ways that you can be conscious, but it's just about being conscious.
Yeah, and thank you, Jill. It's been a really nice conversation, and I think we've got a lot of ideas as to how we can improve our own environment, even if it's just something new that we choose to do ourselves. We are actually going to go over to John Goldwyn. We had an interview with him. He's an architect who designs consciously, making the most of the natural environment. We know you as our Nature Watch presenter, actually. You talk about the environment so much. Now, we are also going to be getting into something a little bit deeper. But for this first segment, let's talk about your work, because what you do is so inspiring and really, really good for us. So can you tell us about, I guess, your key drives as a master planner and landscape architect when it comes to our well-being?
Sure. I think it's actually quite simple. I think you actually, Audrey, taught me a lot of what I try and I guess it was already there in my work, but I guess what I understand now and what you've helped me to understand about what I do is that really designing spaces and places is really very sensory. It's not about the way places look. It's about the way places feel. It's about people understanding that you want to create really fantastic environments that speak to all the senses. And, you know, some people have a great sense of perception through sight. Other people experience places through their noses, or, you know, a combination of all of the different senses. So I think really sensory is the key word for when I'm thinking about my work.
And I think that's beautiful. And actually, it's really good for us as well, because it's, again, through knowing you, when I did some work, I had the opportunity to do literally mindful walks barefoot along the beach. Ooh. But it was because you'd spoken so much about the sense of touch and all of those, that holistic sense of well-being. I was really able to get my clients there to focus on what it felt like, not just the smells, not just the sights. And that was so important. Why is that sensory design so good for us to get back in touch with all of those senses?
I think because it brings you right back into the now. There's a lot of talk about mindfulness and, you know, experiencing what you feel right now. And I think so often that's inside people's heads. But if you're actually thinking, what am I thinking now? Name me a sound you can hear, or, you know, think about something that you can smell right now. I think it's actually very, very grounding, and it really pulls you into the present. And I think that's why it's so powerful, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the hotels that you design, they're a habitual part of the commuting life. How do you get people to really switch off and to relax?
Well, you've got to remember, again, another thing I've spoken to Audrey about in the past, for some people, switching off is hell. People don't want to switch off. Some people want to be very stimulated, and they relax by expressing themselves and dancing and, you know, shouting, and that for some people is what they need. And other people, you know, they like the digital detox and they like to be taken away from everything. But again, I think you have to think about everyone, but so much of my ideas come through, again, grounding people. So thinking about provenance. I've got a lovely story. I was visiting Greece last week and for a new project. And as we were driving through this huge orange grove, the driver said, just wait a moment. And he stopped. And from a roadside vendor, he bought a massive paper bag full of the best oranges I've ever tasted in my life. And he said, you will never taste another orange like this in your life. This is what an orange needs to taste like. And I was like, yeah. And I took one segment of it and I was like, wow, we are so putting this in the movie. This is going to be part of the project. So again, if you have a juice bar where you're drinking these beautiful local oranges, that pulls you right back into the place. People, I mean, it's all very well to go and sit on the beach in a nice hotel in Greece and eat, I don't know, sushi or something that's kind of relevant, maybe, you know, but if you can take the local elements, the local culture, and you can kind of weave these lines, if you can fuse it into the project, then I think it really does start to ground people and give them this kind of mindfulness. I'm not sure if I answered your question there, but I sort of...
Absolutely. Definitely. You painted a really amazing picture, and I can almost, you know, I was almost with you there tasting the amazing oranges.
The orange was so good. I'll send you a photo of it later. The orange was so good. I had to take a photo of it. It was just so vibrant. And again, it's not just the taste of the orange. It's when you peel it, you can see the essential oils coming out from the skin and the smell. And obviously this very, very vibrant colour. So again, I think it was kind of sensory, all in one package.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I want to go there.
Yeah. Yes.
So your master planning is all about getting people to live well. What sort of features are essential with the communities that you create?
I mean, some of it's really simple, like making sure that people can walk rather than jump in their car to get from one side of a place to another. really promoting the use of alternative methods of transport, safe places for kids to play, safe places to sit, places to just go and, just be, just to exist. I don't think it's sort of bound in very, very complex design principles. I think it's about a simple relation to the land that we all have, and just expressing all of those things wherever possible. Sometimes it's tiny little things. Embracing the fact that in my projects, often people are moving at 1 mile an hour through a space, rather than, if you're running down Oxford Street because you've got a meeting or you need to meet someone in Zara, you're hauling ass and you're going as fast as you can. But I think when you're in one of my projects, I'd hope that you slow down and you enjoy every little detail. And a lot of that, again, is sensory. Some of it's visual. Some of it is the smell of the lavender swaying in the evening breeze, or the jasmine flowering. Some of it is visual and pulling on all those kind of things. Some of it's auditory as well. So if you slow down, again, the senses awaken and they open up.
I mean, it's beautiful what you do. And you've really hit on something there, because it is things like the smell and having so many different elements that can actually bring you back to the present moment. Because I've been on holidays before where all people are talking about is work or having an argument with someone, and actually they can't seem to switch off. So I think what you do is absolutely phenomenal.
I think even more important than that, Audrey, is when you go somewhere and someone's holding up their phone just to Instagram every second. Here comes lunch, there was breakfast. Now it's almost like, put that down. And that's very visual, isn't it? That's all very, if I can just get this image of the pool with the sea in the background, and there's some people playing beach volleyball down there, that's the perfect image. That's kind of missing the point, I think. It's very visual and very kind of consuming. It's so nice to just say, you know what, I'm just going to put the phone down and feel this through my toes for a bit. Or
exactly, and not through your phone screen.
Yeah. So essential. Oh gosh, I'm going to leave that thought for a while there. So, for this week's Test the Trend challenge, I challenge you to do some upcycling. Now, have you upcycled anything before, Jude? This is where you've got... We joke about it. You see those scrap heap challenges where you go and pick things up, and then... Is it going to be a lamp, or is it going to be something that sits next to a lamp? Have you ever done any of those? So, not maybe that's sort of a scale, but... that's quite ambitious, really, to kind of change the purpose of something. Have I ever? I have. I've painted old wooden wardrobe doors and then just completely changed the look of the bedroom. And I've painted chests of drawers. Lovely.
Yeah, bedside tables and things. So that probably comes under upcycling because, the way that it was, kind of old and very, very old-fashioned, very dark, didn't go. It would have gone to the tip. So I got years more use. So perfect. I've done it on a very, kind of small scale. What about you? Have you done that?
Well, this is I'm going to give 3 challenges to you out there. What you're going to do is upcycle something, and it can be quite small. So I've recently had to change my credit card because it got cloned. So what you can do with old cards, and not the bit with the chip in it, but you can make them into guitar picks.
Oh, nice
idea. And so you can actually cut round.
Yeah.
And they're really good for the guitar. So that's one thing that I have done.
Nice.
I used to, and this is an old thing that I've done, I've used an old tyre, and you can make a planter out of it. You can put soil in it and so on. But before that, I actually made it into a dog bed.
Did you?
Yes.
A tyre?
Yes,
nice.
A tyre.
Oh,
so we had foam at the bottom and then covered it with a blanket, and my old dog Brandy used to like sleeping in that. So
in the garden?
No, we actually
had
painted the tyre and left it inside.
Nice.
It is really now a planter with her ashes and plants in that. So we've kept the tyre concept.
Yeah.
And then another one, and this one is a little bit dangerous because, and the reason we did this was because we were challenged by a friend of mine to get our guiding upcycling badge. So you had to upcycle 3 different things.
Okay.
And the other one was making a candle holder out of a can. Now, this is nice, and it's a great use of a can, because what you can do is you get your old can, wash it, so on. You punch holes in the can for the light to come through, and then you put the candle on the inside. That's great, and it is pretty, but I will say, word of warning, if you've punched the holes and you haven't filed down the sides, it can be quite painful.
Very
if you catch
sharp,
Yes. So be careful with some bits of upcycling, but have fun and try and give something a whole new look. Well, we've come to the last part of the show, and again, we like talking about the little things we can do to make life better.
Yeah.
And we've had guests like Felicia on the show talking to us about how we can make our own personal lives a little bit better. We've then got on the other end of the scale architects like John, who talks about how he's creating landscapes and urban settings to make life generally better. So I think there's a lot we can do, but it can feel a bit overwhelming.
I mean, yes. I suppose all we can do is just look at our own little world and just do the best we can in everything that we do. Yes. So, for example, we do at home. We do recycle. We're very, very strict. What I suppose I assumed happened to the recycling was that it got disposed of somewhere safely and with regard to the environment and to animals, but maybe it doesn't, and
maybe not all of it does.
Maybe not all of it does, and so absolutely, I think the mantra of what happens before we recycle.
Yes.
So reuse.
Yes.
And reduce.
Yes.
Is absolutely something that I hadn't really thought of.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm personally gonna take on board.
Yeah.
And then going back to Jill was saying things like use white vinegar and bicarbonate soda, but something that she referred to that was the old way. Well, I don't agree with that. I think that's the original way, and I think that it's the best way because it's been used for years and years and years and years and years. And it's only in the last few years that all these, fancy, expensive products that are maybe not safe for the environment have been brought in because they're easier and more, they save us time or whatever it might be. But I think referring to those products as the old ones and maybe not what I would do. I think they're the original and best way to clean, People used vinegar to clean windows for a reason because it worked and it was cheap. Same with bicarbonate of soda, etc., etc. So maybe we can do a lot more around that.
And it's funny you make a point there because I've used products on drains because I get drains, shower, and that sort of stuff. But it's actually the white vinegar that works.
Oh,
so at the end of the day, there's no point spending money on lots of other stuff when that works. So,
and when you do buy the expensive products to clean the drain, you've got to wear goggles and things, and don't stand in the room, don't breathe the air.
It's true.
It's going to clean my drain, but at what cost? So there is a lot to be said for that. And I mean, I shall now use white vinegar. I didn't know you could use that to clean.
I've done it.
Drains.
Wow. It's not cleaned it, but it's got rid of the blockage.
So cleared drains.
Yes.
Well, see, I didn't even know, so I can't stand the smell of vinegar, but I will actually use that instead, save my eyes and, my lungs potentially.
Precisely. And so I think that, the biggest message of the day, and this comes from a lot of our guests, is to make conscious choices.
Yes, exactly. That came through a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So whatever it is you're doing, do it consciously and have a good night.